Hey, Kyler here. Our aim for this show is to leverage every opportunity that life throws at us. I hope you find value in today's show.
Business partners, this one is for you today. My brother and I are in business together, and I know most of the time you were sitting at a camp out, you were sitting grilling some burgers, or you were at a breakfast table, and you looked at one of your buddies and you said, "Hear me out. I've got an idea." And then you shook a hand and you went in together, and the next thing you know, you're 5, 10 years into this business and you've got some problems, or you have some real huge successes that need some strengthening and some more structure. So we need to talk about the idea of a buy sell agreement. And yes, that sounds boring, but a buy sell is critical to the actual lifelong vision of a business partnership. Think about it. If your business partner calls you tomorrow and your business partner's wife calls you tomorrow with the worst news imaginable. Your friend, your business partner, that one you're synced up to in business, suddenly passed away. You technically have to buy out his spouse. You have to come up with that fund somehow. And how is that going to cleanly show up on the balance sheet? I don't know. That's why it needs to be funded ahead of time, thoughtfully planned out ahead of time, because one of these handshake agreements, I'm telling you, it quickly falls apart if there's no money behind it, if there's no pre planned liquidity for that exact moment when someone needs to get bought out. And it doesn't even have to be a life or death situation. It can just be a, hey, you know what? I kind of want to retire early. And that's a good spot to go ahead and make sure everything is funded. And there's a reason I'm in my car right now. Don't worry, I'm not driving. And Kyler, I'm about to pitch it to you. Don't worry, I'm not going to talk the whole time. I am so focused on driving when I'm in the car. Most of us are that way in our business. We're too busy driving to stop and get gas. We're too busy making money, closing deals, to stop and evaluate the structure and the buy sell agreements on if it's actually keeping up with what our goals are right now. So that's why we need to talk about partnerships in our seventh episode of the diagnostic 8 questions every wealth transfer plan has to be able to answer.
Corey, there's a gap. The gap between intention to do this stuff and then the actual capital to make this actually work and to fund it. There's a gap there. And it's actually a really common problem that actually exists when people have partnerships. It's a common thing that you'll see. It's not because they don't have maybe a quote unquote a handshake agreement or there's goodwill or there's good intention. But at the end of the day, intention does not drive the outcomes that people are looking for sometimes. And so,
Mhm.
especially when it comes to legal things. And so, if the money's not there, then sometimes this becomes a situation where there may be some conversations that weren't intended to have, or it could just cause some friction or some tension between family members or whatever that looks like, whatever the partnership looks like. But to just really dumb it down a little bit, but a buy sell agreement, it really just defines really what happens after, or really for a partner's ownership interest to
Mhm.
be bought out. Depending on what kind of trigger or event that will be, it's death, it's disability, if there's a forced exit, sometimes there's different things that people will put into the operating agreement to say, hey, or even like a code of conduct, something that, is really necessary, by the way, if you don't have some sort of code of conduct in your operating agreement or whatever that agreement looks like. Let's say somebody does something that's stupid and they got in a crime or some sort of illegal activity that could actually cause harm to the brand of the business. And sometimes there are things that are actually written out that way that can actually cause or trigger an event for a sale. And so there has to be something in place to actually outline what does that actually selling event look like. And so that's what a buy sell agreement actually does look like in a lot of terms. But I would say in a lot of ways, a partnership agreement or buy sell, it's many times it happens because of someone's passing. and a lot of times it's an unexpected thing. And so we've got to make sure that whoever that person that does pass, that person's family is just taken care of. That's an important thing that has to make sure that happens for there to be taken care of, them to be essentially quote unquote bought out from the other business partner, because in a lot of ways you don't necessarily want to be married to the person's spouse or their family in that kind of concept of business, because many times those spouses, they know what's going on in the business, but they may not be materially involved in it, like employed in the business, and so they probably don't want to be in the operations of the day to day of actually running the business. And so there has to be something in place to actually fund and pay off the other business partner. And so that's really what we're talking about with a buy sell agreement. And when you look at how to fund buy sell agreements, a very common way that people fund this is through life insurance. Life insurance is a great vehicle to fund this because you can you can basically outline the terms of what the agreement number one looks like, but then also within the life insurance policy, you can say who owns the policy, who is the insured, yada yada yada. There are different things that you can actually put in place to make sure that if there is a triggering event that happens upon death or disability, that it is exactly ironed out and smoothed out exactly how it should take place. So it's a very common vehicle to use life insurance as the funding mechanism for a buy sell agreement. And I would say, if you've been in business long enough or you've just lived long enough, I would probably argue to say that you've probably known someone or something that you've actually seen this happen before, or you've seen maybe a business, a partnership, and there was somebody that passed away. It's not uncommon. And I know if you are an attorney, then you've probably helped write these different agreements up in place for people, but you see the reality of why this is so needed, and so it's very, very, very important to make sure you have this nailed down. Business partnerships they're built on trust. Years of shared decisions, shared risk, shared successes as well. The buy sell agreement is really just an extension of trust. But if you have employees, you've got to be able to take care of them as well. If you don't have something in place like this, I don't want to say you're letting them down, but it's somewhat of a gap within the plan. And you definitely want to make sure you have that nailed down. Definitely worth a conversation to the right people that can actually make this happen and fund it correctly, that their family's just taken care of. That's the ultimate thing that most people are wanting. A buy sell agreement that's drafted years ago sets the clear foundation for how this goes. But as the years go on, things need to be updated, just like estate planning documents as well. There was no funding mechanism specifically. All right. Let's say one partner passes away unexpectedly. The surviving partner, of course, they want to honor the agreement because that's what they did in place. The buyout value that was based on a formula, it was substantial. Let's just say, whatever that was for the valuation of the business. Let's say the surviving partner just doesn't have the capital personally to be able to make that happen. The business could support the payment, but on a payment plan, but not just as a lump sum. So really what we've got a situation here is some things that were outlined, but just not actually funded appropriately. That's problematic. And so, what could have been a relatively short timeline, instead of that being a relatively short amount of time, sometimes that could become a 6, 12, 14-month possible thing. Like, maybe even like legal stuff, right? Because we're talking about some really important transferring of, legal ownership here. It loses possibly key employees. It loses maybe some major clients because they weren't able to, they weren't getting fulfilled like they were supposed to because certain people left, right? There's somewhat of consequences, if you will, if certain things are not in place, and it can create extra friction and just slow things down where there's drag in the business. And that can be very problematic for people. So the buy sell agreement, it's a real thing, obviously. Like, these are real situations that people will experience from time to time. And unfortunately, sometimes catastrophic events if a partner passes away too soon. So let's just say let's say for your action step for today, like if you are a business owner, if you have a business partner, you really need to pull out your buy sell agreement this week. If you have one and you need to look at it and you need to look and go do like a pulse check with your business partner and say, hey, this is what we've done in the past, what we've outlined. Is this still up to date? Is this funded appropriately? What do we need to actually do to make sure that we don't have a gap in this part of our business right here? It needs to be an honest and transparent conversation with your business partner. It doesn't need to be a a conversation with your CPA possibly. It just needs to be a one-on-one conversation first, and then once you guys have the idea, if there's something to be changed, whoever maybe drafted that document, then of course take that to them, get their input. But the two of you or the three of you, whoever that is, you need to make sure that you have done that together first, because if one of you died tomorrow, could there be something in place that can actually execute this agreement from a funding standpoint? And if the answer is no, then it's time to make some decisions on what needs to be done. So the partnership that you built is something that together deserves the respect of putting it in place, and it deserves respect in the highest capacity, because we're talking about things that are very, very, very important in taking care of not only the business and things that you've built together, but taking care of the families that you love as well. So you need to fund the agreement. You need to keep the promise. You need to keep on doing the thing, keep on with the business as it goes. And so that's all we've got for today. So hope you guys have enjoyed this one in the diagnostic series. This is episode 7. Next week, we're going to finish it out with episode 8 in the diagnostic series. If you have any questions on funding a buy sell agreement with life insurance, then we definitely would open the conversation to you for that. If you have questions, just text show to 479-396-3528. Again, that's show to 479-396-3528. We will see you guys next week in our last episode of the diagnostic series.